So what if we got people who are genetically the same?
Just like us.
I was scared to death, to tell you the truth, of what was going to happen because we didn't know.
Twins share the same DNA, so we get to see if it's about your genes, not your genes.
And twins were biologically younger. They were no longer identical because had, their DNA was changing. And that was, shocking to everyone. When you have the data, the signal that's so clear, like you want to live long, you want to have, live without chronic disease, a vegan diet's the way to go.
Hi there, I've got some great guests coming up in the pipeline, so do please subscribe so you don't miss out. Now back to the show. Welcome to Plant CEO. In today's episode, I'd like to welcome back Louie Psihoyos, the film director of You Are What You Eat, a twin experiment. He's also done The Cove, Racing to Extinction, Mission Joy, The Game Changers, and he also looks after Oceanic Preservation Society. Hey, Louie, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Just to start with, I spoke with Jane Velez Mitchell, the editor of Unchained TV, and she called you a hero for getting this information out to the public. I would agree with her. And would you like a cape or no cape?
No, I mean, really, it's flattering, but it's really just about trying to use what talents we have to try to make the world a tiny little bit better place. And
yeah,
and there's a lot of people involved. I mean, like when you're doing a film, it's a collaborative effort. You have, we had Netflix, we had producers, we had great editors. It's like a whole team of people. And I just feel like I'm the bull goose loony at the top of it. So it's nice when it works. I tell you, that film has had so much, or that series has had so much response from the public and the medical community. I wasn't counting on it. To give you an idea of how much engagement that project has, it's based on an experiment that, for people that don't know, that I was just curious of, after we did a film called The Game Changers, people said, oh, well, I got off the diet because I'm Northern European, I need milk, or I'm, Asian and I need fish, and I was curious, is like, well, is there really anything about genetics that predisposes somebody to needing, a different kind of nutrition? And I thought, well, why not use twins, identical twins, as kind of guinea pigs for a project? And what we did is we took 21 sets of twins, actually 22, one pair dropped out. So 21 sets of twins, and for 8 weeks, we gave one of them a whole foods, plant-based diet, and the other twin a healthy, a healthy omnivore diet. By healthy, I mean, it wasn't like we were giving them Oreos and Coca-Cola for the vegans and,
yeah,
garbage food for the omnivores as well. So they were both healthy by, let's say the standards of the medical community. We're giving all the nutrients, and we weren't giving them junk food. And now and it was published, the results were published by the Journal of American Medicine, which is one of the most respected medical journals in the entire world. And there's a service called Altmetrics, which measures the engagement by the scientific community and the public, the general public. And a score of 20 is high, 20. I think ours is now over 1,800, 1800. So almost like 2 orders of magnitude more popular than the most popular study that's ever been done in science. So this thing is gone through the roof. It's captured the world's imagination in a way that I hadn't attended. I thought, well, I'll just walk away from that project and start doing something new because, who knows if it's going to do anything. And it struck a nerve, probably because nobody had ever really done it to this extent with twins before, and, kind of rigorous. And it's only, 21 sets of twins, so 42 people. And people say, well, it's not that big enough for us for a real test. But the thing is, I'm having trouble trying to find the right metaphor. But when you get a really strong signal from a study, you don't need a lot of people. So if you're doing a vaccine and there's 10 children that are dying of a disease and all 10 get better, and you want have the 11th child, you don't go, we need more testing. And the results were so stunning. And and for some of the, like for the telomeres and epigenetic tests
Right.
and TMAO, which is, only found in meat, and it's, inflammatory molecule that, is associated with all these, the most chronic diseases we have, heart disease, diabetes, and cancers. It's like, it was shocking to everyone.
Yeah, I learned about the telomeres on your show, so I didn't actually know about that. And yeah, I thought it was fascinating how, it was decreasing on a plant-based diet, and effectively your metabolic age decreases, which is surprising in that period of time, right?
Yeah. So Elizabeth Blackburn, she won the Nobel Prize for her work on telomeres. And for the people who don't know, telomerase is it's the enzyme. It's the telomeres are the end caps of your DNA that basically create the coding for the next cell. Your body, your cells are always regenerating, and the coding that basically it's like a you can call it like a CD. Like if it gets scratched or starts to get broken, it can't transfer the data accurately to the next cell. And as you get older, you start to lose your hair, or you start to
Yeah. Well, at least you have hair.
yeah, a little bit. And well, anyway, so shorter telomeres, shorter life, longer telomeres, longer life, and you could actually regrow these telomeres. They get longer. We know this over a long time. If you have like the right lifestyle, they can. That's why people like in the blue zones, the places where people live the longest without chronic disease,
Right.
they want longer telomeres. And so you want longer telomeres. And what shocked everybody was that the telomeres got longer with the plant-based twins. When we did the study, I had to raise the money for the study. And the scientists over at Stanford University who conducted the study said, well, save your money on the telomeres and epigenetics. You won't see any kind of changes in 8 weeks. And because I knew Dan Buettner, who popularized the blue zones, because we both worked at National Geographic. I was a photographer. He was a writer.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And I was curious, like, would it have anything to do with telomeres? And they said, save your money. And that was probably the most astounding part of the whole study was all the twins were biologically younger. They were no longer identical because they had, their DNA was changing. And that was, shocking to everyone.
The other thing I found really interesting was the visceral fat reduction as well in the plant-based eaters.
Yeah, we weren't even really looking for that. And we know people lose weight on a vegan diet. I want to be clear with everybody too. It's like there's a lot of unhealthy vegan food out there, just, snack foods and all
100%.
that.
Yeah.
Just because it says plant-based or vegan doesn't mean it's healthy. But again, everybody was on a healthy omnivore diet and a healthy whole food plant-based diet. And the visceral fat is the fat around your organs, which again is diagnostic for these metabolic diseases like heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. And if you have 4 pounds or more of visceral fat, this fat that is really hard to get rid of around your organs, it means you're ripe for these metabolic diseases. And that seemed to evaporate on the vegans. Even the ones that weren't as, let's say, compliant or exercised as much as the omnivore twins, it was melting off. There's 2 twins or a pair of twins that were really rigorous. Probably more. They lived together, they exercised together. When I went to the gym with them, and they're doing like the same amount of weight, the same amount of rep. John and Javon, yeah.
Yeah, they were great.
Yeah, and the vegan twin, he didn't have much visceral fat to begin with. It was like, I want to say 0.3 pounds. And by the end of the study, it had almost disappeared. I mean, it was like, it was just a trace amount,
amazing.
So,
he was the one with the deeper voice, and he liked all the steak and the chicken before, right?
Yeah. I think all the twins have changed their diet, not 100%, but I think the results were so stunning for them. It becomes very clear, right? Like when you have the data, the signal that's so clear, like you want to live long, you want to have, live without chronic disease, a vegan diet's the way to go. Now, that said, people say, well, you're cherry picking the data. No, I was scared to death, to tell you the truth, of what was going to happen, because we didn't know. We knew that on a vegan diet, we're going to get some positive results in a short time. We knew that you could lose weight, you could improve your blood pressure, and you could improve your cholesterol. So we knew we'd have those going for us. But all the others, we had no idea. Nobody had idea.
Yeah.
So it was pleasantly shocking in a positive way that the results were so good. But, these weren't a cherry pick. And people say, oh, well, you have a vegan, filming it, and, the researcher.
The bias side. Yeah.
Yeah. And, it's like, well, of course we want the data to support our belief, but everything was blinded. We didn't know. We didn't know until, they pull the curtain away from the data, what it was. And I'm telling you, everybody was shocked across the board about a lot of this data. We had no idea what was going to go on with the microbiome or the telomeres or TMAO. TMAO is only found in animal products. So we knew that was going to go down. But still, I mean, again, it's, a molecule that's associated with all these metabolic diseases. You don't want a lot of TMAO in your system or any of it, but you're going to get loads of it. So here's the thing, an omnivore diet, animal products are more nutrient dense, so you don't have to eat as much.
Correct.
On a plant-based diet, you have to eat more. And people weren't used to that, like it's counterintuitive, like I eat more and I'm going to get thinner.
Yeah. It's opposite because of the water content as well in the veg, whereas the meat is really dense. And obviously we both know Nimai Delgado, who's your fitness coach. And I went on his training program, and the consumption that you need to eat for the food is very high. People need to get used to that. And if you don't eat as much, you won't put on as much muscle mass, which is basically what happened in the show. So there was some learnings for those people. Like if you're working out, you need to eat more.
Yeah. Did you do Nimai's?
I did, yeah. I did,
wow.
yeah.
I did too, and I only did it after the study was over, and I was like, I've got to admit, like when I was filming the twins, I was like, oh, why is this so hard for you? When I did it, I was like, oh, now I get it. This is really difficult. To measure your food, to eat properly, to keep track of your calories, to do all the exercises, to revere, my days really packed, and to have everybody's day, like we all just have the same amount of time. We're all really busy, but when you add, it's almost like another job when you have to do an hour of workouts, and we were pretty strenuous for the first month, weighing food and keeping track of it and putting it all into these apps. It was like, oh, this is a lot of work.
Yeah, I experienced this exactly the same thing as well. It was tough, and plus the workouts were like, you can see why he's so built as well, right? He's doing that all the time. I remember last time we spoke about him jumping the 2 meters like a gazelle. He did that. You added that clip in. I saw this time, because I don't know if you filmed that before or if that was a recent thing that you still can do now.
It was a while ago that we did it. Like 2 or 3 years ago, but it took 4 years to film that. It was
the whole show.
He's gone through a lot of changes.
He has
some tattoos and stuff like that. So people are like, is this for real? But it's like, you do a documentary over 4 years, and people, they change their haircut, they grow mustaches and beards, they shave them off, they get older. It's and you're not editing these in a perfect time sequence. So that parts of that were done probably 4 years ago. And the thing about bodybuilders too, they go through these phases, right? They, like when you're bulking up for a performance, you get a little bit of fat on you, you're eating more, and then you start cutting, so you're doing you're basically, you build up the muscle and the fat, then you cut off the fat. And so I think when we were filming Nimai, it was was a professional bodybuilder. He was like, okay, well, don't film me yet, I'll have to do it in a few months when I'm going to cut, so I look better. So
for sure,
the guy looks like Captain America.
He does.
But he'll, he's, when he's looking at it with a little bit different eye than, let's say, the average viewer. He's looking at his body through a bodybuilder's eyes.
Yeah, for sure. I actually had a vegan stuntman, Hollywood stuntman, appear as a guest on the show, and he had been vegan for 10 years. Actually, he went through a process of trying different diets. On a meat diet, he found that he had a lot of inflammation. And then he went on to a pescatarian diet and found that he had a lot of mercury in his blood. It took him a year to get rid of that out of his system. And then he went on to a dairy diet. and he found that he had a lot of stomach issues. And then this is 10 years ago, so he's settled now on vegan, and he's been 10 years vegan. He was a double for Tarzan. I'm going to introduce you to him. I think it'll be good for you to know him, maybe for your next film. But I think you know, you can be super strong. You know, he does all this like calisthenic stuff. So, you know, whether he's bulking or wants to be a bit more flexible, it depends on the role basically, and they have to turn around in this period of time. So, yeah, it's quite a science, but if you get it right, you get it right.
Yeah, I mean, the people I talk to at the universities that do these nutrition studies, you know, even if they're omnivore, they say the vegan diet is the way to go. You know, when you look at all the data, when you look at all the meta-analysis of all the studies, and you start looking at like what's the best for the human body, with the criteria of feeling better, more energy, reducing inflammation, living longer without chronic disease, a vegan diet wins hands down every time. So
Yeah.
then the question you have to ask yourself is then why isn't everybody vegan or plant-based or whatever you want to call it? Why is, you know, and I think we're trending that way. I think we're trending that, we're accelerating that way, like in the UK, certainly. I think
100%, yeah.
there's, I think the younger people, the generation
Right.
15, 25 or 30, I remember it was like in the high 20s of the percentile now identify as like flexitarians, or, you know.
Yeah, I mean, in the UK, there's 2.5 million people that identify as vegans now.
Wow.
And you got a fifth of the people are in London, actually, with a huge amount more people who are wanting to reduce their meat intake as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's growing here. It's huge here. And everyone's interested in this topic. And I think there's also cool things that we don't know as much. I know you touched on some of this on your series, was about the microbiome, and by having a variety of fruit and veg, that actually feeds it. And I was quite interested to see that.
Yeah, if you don't eat your veggies, yeah, if you don't basically line your gut with veggies,
That was
your
right.
gut
Yeah.
are eating you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the Sonnenbergs. It's a husband and wife team that are both university professors at Stanford. They study the microbiome, and you know, again, they're both plant-based, and this because if you know the data and you're a scientist and you act on the science, you eat what, you know, what the data tells you. And then the question becomes, why doesn't the general public, right? Because, you know, obviously we're heading that direction, but why do people watch the program
Yeah.
and understand the data, or they maybe reject it for whatever reasons, or maybe they accept it and they still persist on eating these animal products, yet they know it. But I think the answer is it takes a while. You know, a lot of people are doing it. It's difficult when you have a whole culture that moves that direction, right? When you go out to eat with friends and they're omnivores, and they're the odd man out that's like struggling to try to work the waiter to try to get something to eat that's, you know, healthy. You know, so we're all sick of that. Like you go to a restaurant and all they have, oh, we have a salad. Well, you know, come on, we're all smart enough now to know that, you know, salad is good for some things, but it's not going to sustain you. That's what people think. You know, you get the, you know, or it's pasta and vegetables. It's like, we want healthy food. We want nourishing food. We want food that tastes good. And we're getting there, but it's going to take a while. One reason we had Daniel Hume, who's you know, he was voted, for people don't know, he was voted best chef in the world, I think in 2017, best restaurant in the world. And he's a 3-star Michelin chef. He lived in Madison Park in New York City. And during the pandemic, that's a great story. He basically, you know, this is back in the early parts of the pandemic when they thought just being around contact with somebody, you know, could kill you. Now, everybody was going out of business. His restaurant went from being, you know, 3-month waiting list to going dark. And he realized that all these people that were manufacturing food that were delivering to him, their food was going rotten because they didn't have access to, you know, the grocery stores and all that. So there's no place to do it. So I thought, let's make the food in our kitchen and we'll give it away. And so he brought back a skeleton crew. They all wear masks. The restaurant part, the dining room's dark, the kitchen goes light, And they made, I think, 1 million meals and gave them away during the pandemic. And he started to realize that people were undernourished. They didn't have the food they needed. And he started thinking, well, like, why am I still serving meat? Like, when we know it's healthier, know it's better for us, and he wanted to use his restaurant as a beacon for the rest of the community. And he thought, I could lose all my stars, but this is the way to go. This is the way we all need to be doing. And I have a chance to use my platform to elevate the level of the Michelin. Everybody can afford a Michelin meal.
Right.
They're expensive. They're it's kind of seen as elitist, but Daniel has such a great heart. So he made this leap, and the restaurant maintained its 3 stars even after they went vegan. And here's the thing: they still give away 5 free meals for every meal that you eat there to people that can't afford it.
That's brilliant.
And yeah, no, it's a wonderful story. He's a wonderful guy, and it's changing on a community level, restaurant level. But to me, it was like a beacon. I wanted to use him in the story to say that, because people say, well, the vegan meals aren't that tasty. Well, anybody that's eaten at a 1-star Michelin chef restaurant knows that this is one of the best meals you've ever had in your life. And 3 stars is like, oof. So it right away dispels the notion that you can't have a tasty vegan food, because one of the best restaurants in the world, certainly the only 3-star vegan restaurant in the world, maintained its 3 stars with the plant-based restaurant.
Totally. Yeah. And also, obviously, in New York, and you had Mayor Eric Adams that gave his own story. And I think the work that he's doing at hospitals is brilliant, like in the state hospitals now offering plant-based options as a default, whereas before, if somebody was to choose it themselves and it was labeled, say, vegan, only 1% was doing it. And you can imagine now, to those people learning about this and their health outcomes, it's kind of like if they didn't have this and you got lung disease and you come in with a plate of cigarettes to give them, right? It's the same sort of thing.
Yeah, to set this up a little bit more, obviously, like I said, Eric Adams is the mayor of New York. And he woke up one morning and he couldn't see. He was going blind. He went to his doctor. The doctor said, well, you have diabetes, early stage diabetes. And if you don't take these meds, it's just going to get worse. You're going to probably get your, some extremities amputated. That's just the nature of the disease. And he gave him all these drugs, for his diabetes, and a pamphlet that said, living with diabetes. And leaving the doctor's office, he said, this is not my destiny. And he just Googled reversing diabetes, and it found all these doctors that we're all familiar with. And he tried it for 3 months, and he came back and his tests were all positive. And his endocrinologist, I think it was, said, well, the drugs must be working. He said, no, I didn't do the drugs. I did a whole food plant-based diet. It wasn't my DNA, it was my dinner. And so what he did was pretty radical. He said, well, you go to the hospital and you see people eating all this food that got them there in the first place. So like you said, now the default at all is the biggest metropolitan municipal hospital system in the world, I believe, the New York system. And now you go there and you have it defaults to vegan. And then in the schools, he also has a meatless Monday and a plant-forward Friday. So 2 days a week, the kids are, given these plant-based options. So they're, it's starting to change on a level. The question I always ask is like, where are we on this curve, right?
Yeah.
Is it a curve that's trending upward? And if so, where are we on that curve? And I think we're at the point that we're starting to curve up, and pretty dramatically. Let me give you just a little. I can't remember if we talked about this the last time, but I had one of the first 3 electric cars in Colorado, the state of Colorado.
We spoke about it. Yeah. I had a whole bit on that. Actually, it was great.
Yeah, and well, just people haven't seen that and I was powering it with 114 solar panels on my roof, and I was like, look what we're doing. In the cars back then, it only had 120 miles of range, but like I didn't pay for gas. When people were paying $5 or $6 a gallon, I don't know if the equivalent is like $9, $10 to get a gallon for gasoline, and I'm not paying anything. And electric companies paying me for production. And I just thought, well, why aren't more people driving electric cars? And now there's, I remember when you could see it, you saw a Tesla on the road, and it's like, oh, look, there's a electric car, hi, you'd wave to them. And now
They're everywhere.
I'm in California. It feels like, every fourth or fifth car is a Tesla
Right.
or an electric vehicle. So electric
Yeah.
vehicles are a trend. We're probably, like, I'd say circa 2010, 2011 in terms
Right.
of the plant-based movement.
Yeah.
What's going to be. I think, I hope, and soon, like, eating animal products on a plane will be like smoking on a plane.
Yeah.
You can't do it, or
Same thing. Yeah.
there'll be a room for you to do it at the airport. You go outside,
Yeah.
back in the alley.
Yeah. I think, we spoke about there before about, like, why aren't people adopting it to it faster? And I always think that it's, we said that it's kind of cultural, and, when you're sitting down at a meal at a restaurant, etc. And one of the things is stuff like this definitely is a bit of a wake up call, but also we have to realize that people are on their own journeys. And as an industry, we can't be too judgy about that. I went on my own journey. You went on your own journey, I'm sure. And the science just has to tell the truth. And I think that's what we're finding out now. And I think what we've got to be mindful of is that, in the Western world, for example, where people can have 3 meals a day, times by 7 is 21 meals. And if we look at that and say, well, okay, great. How many of those meals are plant-based? If it's one, great, have one more, and start increasing that number. And it's a good thing to do. What's your advice for activists now working in this industry to sort of wake up, whether it's sort of animal welfare or planetary health? What's your thoughts on the direction they should be taking?
Well, I mean, everybody's going to take their own, like you say, their own journey. What we found is that, well, let's say the funders of our project, there's a group of high net worth individuals that, emotionally are attached to this for a variety of reasons. It's usually animal welfare, the environment, and a lesser extent health. But you have to, I'm always looking for the lever. What's the lever that's going to get people to change? And you might, listen, I spent more time than I'd ever want to at a CAFO, these concentrated animal feeding operations, which is where 99%, over 99% of the food in America comes from. If people haven't seen one, and there's no reason you should unless you work at one, because they won't let you visit one. Nobody's going to let you
Yeah.
see how the chickens are raised, or your
Yeah.
turkey, or the ducks, or the pigs, or just look, see what's going on at a feedlot. Because if you saw it, or where your cows are being milked, because if people knew the process that where almost all their animal products come from, it would be repelling. And so if you do visit a CAFO, 15 seconds, 10 seconds in any shed of filled with chickens, we're talking 10, 20, 30, 40,000 chickens, the ammonia hits you. And you realize this isn't like some anomaly. This is where these animals have to live in 24/7. This is their life. They're in this ammonia-filled shed. It has big fans. It's just so when you have 40,000 chickens all defecating and urinating in the same spot, is going to be a lot of buildup of ammonia. 10 seconds in that would it be enough to repel you from having anything to do with the chicken in your entire life. And I think the industry knows that. So you have these what they call ag-gag laws here, where they don't allow people to see journalists to go in to see what's going on. You can get arrested.
Or not having windows.
Yeah, exactly. They don't want people walking up and seeing where their food comes from. But there's a reason for that, because if you did, it would destroy your market. It's very bad marketing to see that billions of animals around the world are being tortured. If you treated the animals that we keep, dogs and cats that way, or horses, you would be jailed. But yet we do this to these other species, and pigs are really intelligent too, But here's the thing: it's like you go there and you feel emotionally like people need to see this. people aren't ready to hear that information because they believe it's normal, natural, and necessary to eat that way. You have to first get to them in a different way, because the information is too counterintuitive. It's like, we need to eat this way. We have to eat this way. That we're built to. This is the narrative that people tell themselves. We're hunter-gatherers. Well, we're not hunter-gatherers. I know the people that came up with the name the hunter-gatherers. It was a conference that was done I think in the 1960s, and it was originally called the Gatherer Hunter Conference. But the professor said, well, it's not going to be, sexy enough. Call it the hunter-gatherers, because, men were deciding the names, and, hunting it's really a social construct. When they go into these primitive cultures where they're still, pretty much unaffected by Western, ideas, there's hunting and gathering going on, but most of the calories are collected by the women who are gathering, because the men mostly come back empty-handed. And it's a social, hunting is a social construct. Like I got the animal, so therefore I get the female, and there's a pecking order that's created on social grounds, not on caloric grounds. So, if you looked at it, just the cold hard facts, in these cultures, women are the primary, gatherers of the most protein.
Yeah.
And it puts this idea in its head, because it's, there's still a patriarchy going on. We like to think we're man to be eating meat, and then nothing could be further from the truth. Yeah, they go out and they get meat, and sometimes the amount of calories that they expend on a hunt exceeds what it costs to go get there. But it's a social construct. And by the way, here's the thing: 4% of the massive mammals on the planet are wild. It would take, like, if we said, okay, we're not going to raise animals anymore, we're going to go out and hunt for our animals to get our protein, you would expend the total population of wild animals, all the giraffes, elephants, all the mammals, in about 4 months. That's about all the fuel that there is to feed humanity.
Yeah, it's insane, isn't it?
Yeah, and so we're not hunter-gatherers anymore.
Yeah.
We're basically torturing these animals so we could eat them. And now the question: how do you get around this narrative, right? Because people don't want to hear that, especially somebody that's not there, like that they're not ready to hear the information. So the lever for me is like what we did with the Game Changers. You have the anti-hero, James Wilkes, the protagonist, who is a meat eater and a UFC fighter, a killer. He was training the UFC champion who was teaching the federales and the Navy SEALs how to kill people with their bare hands. And he gets injured and, discovers that the best way to recovery was a plant-based diet. It was counterintuitive to everything he was thinking about. So then he becomes the advocate. And you let his discovery be like, a proxy for the average person. It actually, the average jock who might think, oh, you have to eat meat to be big and strong. So there's a lever. There's always a lever. And in this case, I think with the twin experiment, it was the twins. It's like there's a very diverse group of twins becoming the proxy for the reader and saying, that along the way, you'll learn what we learned. It's healthy to live longer.
So I was thinking also, like, when you thought about the twin idea, did you also think about triplets and giving one of the triplets like a meat and dairy, the other one pescatarian, and then the last one vegan? I mean, you could go on, right? Just have all the, and you can have one with a Mediterranean diet.
Actually, I did not think of it. And you know what? Go for it. It's a lot of work to come up with the ideas for this stuff. I mean, we can sit here and think of like, oh, let's do this, but then come up with the money for it, come up with the researchers, and there's a whole
it must be a big project. And how did you find those twins, by the way? Was that from the Stanford University? They kind of conducted that and found them. And
there's all kinds of twin registries where twins have opened themselves up for study by medical communities around the world. There's actually a great one in London. Timothy. I almost spaced on his last name, but he's been doing an ongoing twin study for quite a while.
Related to diet?
the diet is part of it, but it's I think they're looking at everything,
Right.
When twins are such a great analog for studies, because you have the one twin do you can start to parse out, like, well, here's the thing, like, if you ask somebody what they ate, if you ask me what I ate, it's like, I'm not going to remember everything. I'm going to probably exaggerate the good stuff and minimize the bad stuff. I'll give you an idea. I did a story once. It's actually, I've got it here holding up my computer.
Okay.
I did a story for, yeah, you can't see that.
It's defocusing, yeah. Oh yeah, now it's it. Yeah, there you go.
For National Geographic on trash. It was in 1983.
Oh wow.
Now there's a guy in that article, William Rathje. He's a garbologist, and I'll get it. This will make sense here in a second. He was an archaeologist, worked on Mayan cultures, but he said the best thing you could do is find out what an ancient culture was actually doing, is to find the garbage pit. That's where they had the bones of the refuse. Obviously all the plants would erode quicker. What would be left would be the bones. They didn't find a lot of bones, but he said, well, why don't we apply the same methodologies that we do analyzing ancient cultures to modern culture? So he's working in Tucson, Arizona, in the U.S., and he would, at the front door would be some college PhDs with a clipboard asking people what the family ate in the front door, right? They get somebody at the front door. At the back door, somebody's stealing their garbage. Yeah. Literally, they're taking the garbage, right? So so they'll ask, like, how much do you drink? Oh, we don't drink much at all. Maybe a couple beers a week. Blah blah blah. Not meat, not much meat. We're big on the veggies. In the blah. And then they're going through the garbage and looking at all the wrappers, and they're forensically adding up what they actually ate and comparing it to what they said they ate. And there's a big discrepancy, right? So
it's amazing.
So when you ask somebody how many eggs they ate a week or how much they drink a week, highly suspect. So these tests where you're relying on people to self-report what they say they do is like, it's not trustworthy. We were controlling, and listen, we delivered food for the first 4 weeks to the twins, and we were pretty sure they're eating what they said they ate. But sometimes you go to the halfway mark and you go check on the refrigerators. Just you might have to take a look in there, and you see that there's some stuff that probably shouldn't be in there if you're
right.
So we think that people were pretty adherent because you can see that the TMAO is going down. TMAO is only found in animal products. So when so we know that they were adherent. Because there's these markers, these biological markers that you can tell, but still you don't know, right? And I just think that we are our own worst enemies when it comes to giving the truth to what we're actually consuming. And when you do Nimai's project, when you actually start to tally put this, when I start to tally what I was putting in my mouth, it wasn't horrible. It's just like, I'd be like, oh, I'm eating nuts. That'll be healthy. It can't be that many calories. And it's like a quarter cup of nuts is like 250 calories. And it wasn't more, I was doing more than a quarter cup. When you do the addition, it's like, oh my God, no wonder I'm,
yeah,
not as small as I wish I was. So when you're doing this, when somebody doesn't know that they're okay, if you're part of a study, you're going to try to be a little bit more adherent, because in this case, the eyes of the world are looking at you. But when you're just going up to random houses and asking people what they ate, I don't believe it. I don't think know how hard it is to keep track. If you have a app there, and every time you're consuming, that was an 8-ounce glass of whatever juice, kombucha or whatever, you start to add it up. It's horrifying horrifying.
Totally.
Horrifying to me, like how much I was actually consuming and not paying attention to it. Now I pay attention to it because of Nimai's.
Yeah. And that's why it's such a good name for the show. You are what you eat. And also my dad would say your stomach isn't a graveyard for dead animals. Uh, and thinking about that, I actually went on a podcast of a friend of mine, and it's called Leadership in Color by Shez Ekbal, and he's actually got twins, so he was really interested to learn more. So I came on his show and I started talking about it with him. It's fascinating, like people have seen it and they're talking about it, and I think your choice of those twins were also great. Their personalities were brilliant. It was so nice to see how they're finishing off each other's sentences. And like one I remember was when Charlie and Michael, who love their cheeses, right? Michael was like, sometimes I might want to go outside and walk alone. So he goes, come on, Charlie, let's go. It was like, oh, that was brilliant. So the little snippets that you added was just like really quite nice in between.
Yeah, there's something about twins. There's the camaraderie, the companionship, the competitiveness, and some, twins it's adorable, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's infectious to watch them. And
Yeah.
I wasn't counting on that so much. I mean, I thought that would be like, I didn't want it to be a distraction to the program, but it became kind of like a nice through line.
And it was like, it was kind of, you want to see those little interactions as part of the story. So I think it worked really well. Are you thinking of keeping a track on the ones that were in the study? And are you going to be following, like, especially the ones who, because I guess they're also now starting their own journey, like maybe some of them didn't go completely plant-based, but are you thinking of following up with them and perhaps do another story about them?
All these great ideas you have, I hope you're coming up with funding for me, right?
Yeah, sure. No problem.
That's an excellent idea. I think more importantly, I would be curious to the reader about the readers, the impact of the readers. What I've always wanted to do is get, the funding for a study to say you do a film like the twin experiment, and you interview, I don't know, whatever the base amount of people you need to do a population grade study. I think it's like 11 people. So you have 1,100 people test before they see the program. Then you have them see the program, and then you ask them questions about what they eat and if they'll change it. And then you do a follow-up a year later and 5 years later to find out more importantly, is what's the impact of the series on the general population. Because what I want to know is how effective a project is. And you can start to calculate how much CO2 you save, how much fresh water is saved, how many animals are, not leading a life of suffering. You could probably do a calculation then based on how well people's health, the general public's health is doing. The insurance companies, if this film is having, or the series is having a serious effect on people adopting a plant-based diet, insurance rates should go down because people will be healthier.
Yeah.
Dan Buettner, again, is the guy that popularized the idea of the blue zones. He has a project, it's called the Blue Zones Project, where he goes into cities around mostly America and tries to turn them into a blue zone city. Again, for the people who don't know, like, blue zones are places where people live the longest without chronic disease. They live, back in the 2000s when he was doing that study for Geographic. There was a lot of centenarians, people living over 100, like these large concentrations of, that shouldn't be there. There shouldn't be like a small community of people with, 30, 100-year-old of a town of just a few thousand. Like, what are these people doing differently? And what he found was that about 95% of their calories were coming from a whole foods, plant-based diet. There's other things going on in these communities. There is a sense of community, that they are exercising. They're doing their own gardens. They're growing their own veggies. There's a lot of other things that you can do to live longer, but the most important thing is by putting the right fuel in the tank. And these people were doing it not by design. It was almost because of default. It was easier and cheaper to grow your own vegetables. They were living on hillsides, so they were walking a lot. They were getting exercise, not like, they weren't going to the gyms. They were,
For sure. And in Okinawa, they don't have the sofas, and they're sitting on the floor. So they're getting up and down. Or in Sardinia, they're walking up the hills. And
right. What Dan found about trying to go into these communities like Fort Worth, Texas, and he would, work with the community, the mayor and the chambers of commerce to get bike paths, get people, doing more natural exercising and getting the at least 2 plant-based meals on a restaurant, so you get the little blue zone plaque. What he found is that the insurance company, there'd be like usually one insurance company that was paying for him to do a study, like a longitudinal study of like what's if you increase the health of a whole community, what's it going to save that company, that insurance company. What they found is that, like, they would pay for, I don't know, $250,000 or $1 million for Dan to go, improve the health in this community. It's like the insurance rates for everybody went down,
Wow,
because
amazing.
everybody got healthier. The BMI, the body mass index for high school kids, when they took out the vending machines or made it, an infringement to eat snack, they take the vending machines out of all the high fructose, drinks.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and everybody got healthier. It not only benefited that, not only paid for that insurance company, it paid for the whole community. And he just sold the Blue Zones project for $1 billion, to Adventa. Adventus. It's one of the big insurance companies in America.
Oh, I didn't know. Wow, amazing.
Yeah. If you can make these little changes across a population, it has an enormous effect on the health and the cost of, people say, well, like, don't tell me what to eat. Well, I'm not going to tell you what to eat, but you know what? When you eat unhealthy, it affects everybody. It's almost like this, eating animal products is like the secondhand smoke for the world, right? It's like, okay, it might be you're right to eat meat, but it's affecting our fresh water, it's affecting our air, and it's affecting our health premiums. And also it's affecting the healthcare system, right? It's crippling the healthcare system. Like here, our NHS waiting times, you go in to get to be seen. It's a fantastic system, but it's full. And if we started to make this change into our diets, it will save so much money. And for them to do a lot more things with that money in terms of other types of research and outreach and changing people, but it just doesn't get spoken about with doctors, even at school. So I think the education is key to this as well. Yeah, well, an anecdote here. My nephew just graduated from medical school, and he's doing his residency now. And I thought, oh, he's vegan, and he's exercises. He's like an Adonis. He's not quite Nemai's character, but he's not a bodybuilder, but he's cut. He looks good. He's handsome. He's smart. And I thought, oh, we finally got at least one, vegan doctor in there. They don't. And he said to me, Uncle Lou, it's like, you don't have time. When you have somebody that's unhealthy, you come in, you have 12 minutes with them. You're not going to convince them in 12 minutes to change their diet. You can, maybe advise them to, eat more plants and fruit. But he said that the system is set up so that all their time is just spent doing data and writing scripts. He says you don't have time to try to change their behavior. And he said when he does, the doctors above him tell him to stay in his lane. His job is to recommend, what drugs to give them, because if they have high cholesterol, you give them a drug, because if they don't do it, they're gonna, they could be set up for failing, because there's more that needs to happen, because they don't teach nutrition in medical schools. One doctor told me that the only nutritional advice he got in all of medical school was what to put in an IV bag. So the doctors are some of the least programmed of, people to tell us, how to improve our health. They're good at drugs. Don't get me wrong. I mean, if I have something wrong, I want to have a doctor tell me, but I'm not convinced that they're the best ones to give nutritional advice.
Yeah, for sure.
They don't teach it.
They don't. And I think definitely missing a trick. And I don't know if it's because of the pharmaceutical industry wanting to obviously sell their drugs, and it's more of a commercial thing that it's not being taught, or funding to universities, or I don't know.
I think that's true. There's no money in it. Well, if the stats are right, somewhere between 75 and 80% of the chronic diseases we have are preventable and reversible by deciding to change your lifestyle, to eat better, eat more fruits and veggies, and exercise. That's
for sure.
what most people need. Where's the money in that? Like I don't think I think it's just the way the system's set up. I was told in some cultures you pay the doctor when you're healthy and you don't pay them when you're unhealthy. That changes the whole
Yeah.
ecosystem.
Yeah. That's interesting. Do you know which culture that is?
You have to Google it. I hope it's not one of those urban legend things.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to ask was, how are you able to get this crucial information with Netflix when other filmmakers seem to encounter some brick walls when it comes to these major streaming platforms? And do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, I mean, my advice is like, everything that we do is mission driven. Like I'm looking. My goal is, when I look at doing any project that we take on, I think like, how if I work on this, and this can be a big time suck out of my life. My North Star is, how do you make the world a little bit better? How do
Yeah,
you change?
100%. Yeah.
And it's not, getting people to eat less animals because of suffering. I realize that people aren't going to sit down and watch a Netflix program because they want to be told that what they're eating is causing tons of suffering. First
Yeah.
rule first rule of filmmaking is, don't be boring, make it interesting. And and so that's what we try to do. It's like, we're storytellers. I'm interested in, how do you use film to change culture, and that's our North Star. And it's not always like, the way you get there is not always a direct route. Sometimes it's counterintuitive. If you want to save animals, maybe the best way is to tell people a different story. My advice is like, figure out what you want to do with your life and figure out the best way to be effective. There's a difference between, most filmmakers want to make a film that makes them feel right. Like, I'm going to tell people what to think or what to believe. And it's like, well, I want to tell people a good story so they can come up with their own conclusions. And I want a film that's going to be effective more than make me feel like I'm right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we did throw caution to the wind on this wind experiment, because like I said, we didn't really know what was going to go on with a lot of the data. Thankfully, it came out, the net positive for the vegans, because I was scared, up until we got those results. I was like, oh man, but I was willing to hear the uncomfortable truth if that's what it was. It's like, well, then we'll know. Maybe you should be eating eggs. Maybe you should be eating some meat. Maybe you should be eating some fish. But all the data says, if you want to live long, if you want to live without chronic disease, eat a whole foods plant-based diet. The data is really clear. It's delivered through this very entertaining mechanism, the twins. It takes some thought. It takes some energy to think, like, how are you going to make how do you come back from a day of work. You're working, I don't know what you do in the UK, 8 hours here at least. You're commuting, but you've got kids, you've got, maybe your relationship's not great at home, you've got expenses. You don't want to hear a lot more bad news when you turn on the telly. You want to, like, be entertained.
Yeah, that's good advice. And so, do you have a next project in mind?
We've got 5 of them right now that we're working
5?
on.
Wow. So the one we spoke last time, Food 2.0, was that this project? Was this was that project? Okay, right.
That was the working title. Now it's
right. Okay, fine. And so, what can you tell me, if you can, about your next 5?
I think the next one, that's really exciting is, I'm a little bit leery, only because I know that there's, it seems there's always a lot of competition for great ideas out there. But if people haven't seen The Cove is about, the hunting of dolphins in Japan for food. And that film had a tremendous amount of effect on, the amount of, the animals are being killed in Japan right now for meat. It's reduced by 93% since we did that film. But I'm interested in, like, animal intelligence. Like, what are, there's all these AI groups out there that are trying to decipher animal language, and they're getting pretty close. So we're working on a film right now that's it's using AI to try to figure out animal communication, and that's
exciting. Amazing. There's so much to learn from what we don't know with whales and dolphins. And
okay, well, think about this. I mean, also, okay, whales, those are big brain animals. What about a butterfly? The monarch butterfly takes 3 generations to fly from Canada to Mexico. And in Mexico, they're finding this 6-hectare area where they all congregate. 3 generations to get down there.
That's amazing. I didn't know about that.
That's a hell of a GPS to communicate through your
Yeah.
biology. How's that being done? I know
Yeah.
it might not be intelligence, but there's something else going on there.
Right.
And I'm fascinated by this idea that we disregard every animal because of our own criteria of what we think of as intelligence. If you say that intelligence is the ability for a species to live within its own ecological boundaries, you would probably say humans are failing. So on that as an intelligence scale, you might say we have pretty poor marks, but everything else looks pretty damn good. Because no other wild animal will go to live to the point where they desecrate their environment, but we're doing that. So is that intelligent? You have, like you bring up whales and dolphins. There's incredible things that we know that they're communicating. Where to find food. There's stuff going on, but we think, oh, those are just noises, creaks, squeaks, and codas, but there's probably some really sophisticated communication going on, but we don't know quite what's going on. I'll just tell you a real quick story. There's a guy, when we were doing the Cove, there's this guy, Lou Herman, that was doing a study with captive dolphins. They captured some dolphins off the coast of Hawaii. And dolphins, you can very quickly train to do, let's say, do a flip. And they have these hand signals, and the dolphins get that very readily because, when you're watching a dolphin do a trick, you're not watching like entertainment. You're watching a spectacle of dominance, right? They need to be fed. They learn very quickly. And they also, when you put 2 dolphins in a tank and you say together do a flip, they do that quite easily. They put a hydrophone in a tank, and they were recording these 2 dolphins while they were giving tricks. And one of the researchers had come up with a gesture saying, "Be creative." So the dolphins, to get fed again, had to come up with a trick on their own in order to be fed, and the dolphins readily would do that. And then somebody had the brilliant idea, together, be creative. And the first time they did that, my memory was the dolphins did something they'd never done before. They went down into the tank, they came up, they did a 1.5 flip, and they simultaneously spit water into the face of the trainer.
No way. So how did they? That's wow.
My point is, in that amount of time, there's a lot of communication going on. So those squeaks, somewhere in there is go down, do a flip. We're gonna spit water in his face. But there was something going on there that was communication, and that was kind of the Rosetta Stone. But
yeah,
my memory of the story was that a couple of the grad students that were working on that realized that these animals are a lot smarter than we thought. And they released them like within a couple of days. They went in the middle of the night and brought them out to sea. But anyway, there's a lot more going on with probably all animals, from insects up to blue whales. And we did this film called Racing Extinction, and Chris Clark, who was one of the subjects of that film, he said, everything with a heartbeat has a song, from insects up to blue whales. And he said we've just stopped listening.
Yeah.
I think that's the key, is that if we can listen again to these other creatures that we surround this incredible planet with, we'll be a lot better off. And so that's the film I want to make, is like use AI to sort of as a portal into respecting, the animals that we share the planet with.
Yeah. That's incredible. It'd be great to see that once you've put that together. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and congratulations again.
Yeah, well, thank you so much again. We had a great group of people, and great talking to you again. Cheers.
Yep. See you. Take care.